How you guys doing tonight? We got one more night in us? Okay, I want everyone's attention. Shh. Tonight we're going to do business with God. Tonight is the reason that you all came to this weekend. Do y'all realize that tonight is the turning point in your guys' lives? Tonight is the night where the Lord shows up and everything changes. Everything changes from here on out. You guys remember earlier today I talked about prostitutes, right? Y'all remember that? Well, there was one that I left out. This is probably one of the dearest testimonies to my heart. When I was in college at the University of Georgia in Athens, I had a, okay, go Dogs, all right. So we had a rough year this year, but I'm going to move on from that. So when I was at UGA in Athens, the Lord called me to do a street ministry. And what I did was, with a group of guys, me and a group of about 20 to 40 guys, we would go downtown on Thursday nights. And we would actually stand outside of a strip club. We'd stand outside of the wall on the strip club. And we'd talk to people about Jesus. And we'd be out there, and we had some of the craziest things happen. And what we would do is we wouldn't yell at people or rail at people or tell them to repent or they're all going to die and go to hell. We would just talk to them about the love of Christ, and we would be Jesus to them as any way we could. And we would actually wear blindfolds. They would actually be blue, and I'd wear them over my eyes like this. So we'd stand there on the wall blinded, and they had these blue blindfolds that said pure life on them. And we said, we're going to be young Christian men that stand for purity in our generation. We're going to be guys that stand for purity in the church, and we're going to pray in the darkest spot in downtown Athens. Athens is filled with bars. So we go down there every Thursday night, and we just start praying for the Lord to save strippers, for the Lord to take these women out of this industry and show them Jesus. And the craziest thing happened. I tell you, the craziest things will happen if you guys will pray. So we were praying about a year into this. Every Thursday night, we'd go down there for about 4 hours and pray and witness. And about a year into it, we would meet at this little prayer chapel off campus. And usually we'd head downtown about 10:30. We'd go down there and we'd take our post on the wall. And we'd begin praying, and we'd have our blindfolds on. People come by, yell at us, spit on us, call us all sorts of crazy names. Doesn't matter, we're standing for Jesus. About a year into this, we met a girl named Miriam. Everyone say Miriam. Miriam was a broken woman. She worked at the strip club. She worked at Toppers. We meet her, and she begins to share her life with us. And every week she'd come by before she went into work, and she'd say, guys, I need your prayer. Would you guys pray for me this week? Before she'd go into the strip club, we'd pray for her, ask the Lord to help her get out of this job. She said, I need to do this because I need money. I don't have any other way of doing this, but I hate it. I hate the way it makes me feel. So we kept praying for Miriam. One night, we're at our prayer chapel. It's probably about midnight. Usually we head downtown at about 10:30, but this night the Lord was just stirring on our hearts to pray. So we leave at about 12:30, and as we're pulling out of the parking lot, we're miles away from downtown. My buddy Jacob next to me goes, stop the car. And we look over, and Miriam's walking along the side of the road. It's the middle of the night. It's far away from downtown. And I roll down my window, and I say, Miriam. She turns around, and she can't recognize me. She goes, who's there? And I had never told Miriam my name at this point. We had just prayed for her. And she comes up to the car. I say, it's Jonathan. And she goes, oh, okay. And I said, well, you don't know my name, but I'm that guy that prays downtown. She goes, no, last night, the craziest thing happened. She goes, I heard the name Jonathan out loud twice before I went to bed. Nobody in her room, she heard the name out loud. The Lord was speaking to her. Well, we had some girls that were involved in the ministry with us, and they got out and they started talking to Miriam, and they said, hey, why don't you come and hang out with us for a little while? She kind of got quiet. She looked at her feet, and she said, well, I don't know. And they said, come on, please, what are you going to do? Where are you headed to tonight? And she said, well, she started stumbling over her words. She wouldn't tell us what she was going to do. Usually she was working on Thursday nights. So she ends up hanging out with the girls that are involved in the ministry with us. And the girls come to find out that Miriam was on her way to commit suicide that night. She had poison in her bag and she was going to a bridge at the end of the road. She was going to take the pill and she was going to jump off the bridge and die. We're pulling out of the parking lot. There's about a 30-second window that you can actually see the alley where she was walking on. And the exact moment that we're pulling out of the parking lot, Miriam walks by. I call out her name. She comes back. She ends up living with these girls that are involved in our ministry. Weeks go by. She's living with us. She's living with the girls that are involved in the ministry. And we begin to tell her about Jesus. We begin to tell her about the love of Christ. She's quit her job. She decided she didn't want to do that anymore. But she had no money, and so she was living with us. We were buying her food. We were being the love of Christ to her in the only way that we knew how. So the girl she was living with was a girl named Julie. And Julie approached her one night and she said, Miriam, what do you think about Jesus? And Miriam said, don't say that name to me. I don't want to hear about him. Julie was kind of taken aback and she said, why? What's the matter? Why don't you want to hear about Jesus? She said, I don't trust that man. She goes, why? What's wrong? She could tell there was some deep hurt in Miriam's heart. Miriam said, I've been raped twice in my life. And both times, the men that did this to me said that Jesus told them to do it. Both times. Julie began to cry and she said, that's a lie. Jesus did not tell those men to do that. Miriam's like, that may be so, but I don't believe it yet. Some months go by. We begin to pray. We continue to serve Miriam on a daily basis. She's living with these girls in our community. A couple months goes by and she comes to Julie one night. She goes, Julie, I've been thinking about what you said to me about Jesus. And here's what I've decided. If Jesus is as loving as you guys are, I want to know him. I don't believe what those guys said. I want to know him because you guys have been the love of Christ to me. Miriam gave her life to the Lord that night, and she is still serving the Lord today. She's no longer a stripper. She's a waitress. She's moved back with her family in Texas, and her life has been transformed, radically transformed. Hallelujah. I want to say this. Miriam needed something real. She needed something authentic and real. And I believe this generation, I believe your all's generation is crying out for something real. We don't want religion. We want the risen Christ. We want the reality of Jesus Christ in our lives. We want to encounter something so much better than this culture has to offer us that we will be ruined forever. And the reason I share that story about Miriam is because Miriam was hopeless. She said, there's no way God could ever use me. There is no way God could use me. I have a messed up, broken, screwed up life. But the Lord is using her now. The Lord is actually using her to minister to other strippers and to other girls in the strip clubs. Imagine the power of that testimony. I believe there's some of y'all in here that are saying, God cannot use me. You don't understand what I deal with. I'm so scared of people's opinions. I'm stuck in addictions. I have a messed up home life. I got all these issues going on. God could never use me. But I want to say that's a lie. That is an absolute lie tonight. And I want to break off hopelessness from you guys. And I want to give you hope and vision that the Lord can use you to save your friends, to bring them from hopelessness to life. The disciples. Many scholars believe the disciples were between the ages of 16 and 19 years old. Who in here is between the ages of 16 and 19? Isn't that crazy? The disciples were uneducated fishermen, foul-mouthed fishermen. They were guys that couldn't read, they couldn't write, and Jesus looked at them and said, I'm going to build my church with those guys. He looked at them and he said, that's who I want. Peter, Simon, James, John, all you guys, I'm going to build my church on you. And here's the deal. You guys already got one up on the disciples. You all can read, right? Hopefully most of you can read. But for real, the Lord can use you guys. The Lord